The minimum wage hasn't moved in 16 years, but rent exploded, groceries doubled, and corporate profits skyrocketed. This isn't just a scam. It's a disrespect to the people who give 40 hours a week yet still can't afford to live. But for the rich, poverty is profit. However, it wasn't always like this. In 1981, something changed, and what was meant to fight poverty became legalized poverty itself. The U.S. minimum wage started in 1938. It was part of a law called the Fair Labor Standards Act, signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt didn't hold back. He said, "By living wages, I mean more than a bare subsistence level. I mean the wages of a decent living." He introduced this during the Great Depression, when times were tough, jobs were hard to find, and greedy employers were taking advantage of desperate workers. So the goal was simple: make sure that hard work can lead to a decent life. Keep wages fair, reduce poverty, and help the whole economy grow from the bottom up. And for a while, it actually worked. In the 1960s, someone working a full-time minimum wage job could afford a place to live, food on the table, and even support a small family. In 1968, the minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. If we adjust that for inflation, that's about $14.70 today. That's almost twice the current federal minimum wage. Back then, wages rose along with productivity. When workers did more, they earned more. But that link is broken now, and with it, we lost the promise of fair work for fair pay. But wait, what changed? 1981. That was the year the livable wage began to disappear. A new president, Ronald Reagan, brought in a big idea: trickle-down economics. The idea was simple: cut taxes for the rich and big companies, and their success would somehow trickle down to everyone else. But it didn't. From 1981 to 1990, the federal minimum wage stayed stuck at $3.35 per hour, but prices kept rising. Even worse, workers were doing more, adding more value to the economy. Economists call this the Great Decoupling, when wages stopped growing while productivity kept rising. From 1979 to 2025, worker productivity went up by over 86%, but hourly pay? It only grew by 32%. That's not just bad luck, it's a massive transfer of wealth from workers to owners, from regular people to CEOs. One report says CEO pay grew by over 1,300% between 1978 and 2020, while the average worker's pay grew by just 18%. This was the shift. Profits went up, but pay stayed stuck. The minimum wage didn't just stall, it became a trapdoor. And when workers fall through it, someone else catches the cost. Millions of low-wage American workers rely on federal aid, like Medicaid and SNAP, just to meet basic needs. They're working, they're still poor, and they're still paying taxes. Regardless of whether you work a minimum wage job or not, everyone still pays into the system, and when that paycheck isn't enough to live on, the government steps in with help. But here's the twist. Workers help fund government programs with their taxes, then get blamed for needing help from those same programs. While the companies, they keep the profits. Just two companies, Walmart and McDonald's, cost US taxpayers over $1 billion a year in public aid. That's not capitalism, that's corporate welfare. Private profits, public expense. And the bigger these companies get, the more power they buy. They spend millions lobbying Congress, not to innovate, but to keep wages low and keep you paying the difference. Take Amazon. Jeff Bezos became one of the richest people on earth, but thousands of his warehouse workers still qualified for food stamps. That's not innovation, that's extraction. To put that in perspective, if Jeff Bezos made $15 an hour, how long would it take him to afford just one share of Amazon stock? In the richest country on earth, no one packing boxes for billionaires should need food stamps to survive. But maybe you've heard the pushback. Raising wages will kill jobs, it'll destroy small businesses. Prices will skyrocket. Are those facts or just fear? Let's break down what the data actually says. A massive 2021 study looked at over 130 different reports. It found little to no effect on employment. In some places, jobs even went up. Why? Because when workers earn more, they spend more on food, rent, clothes, which helps local businesses. And when workers stay longer, companies save on hiring and training. People say small businesses can't afford higher wages, but most already pay above the minimum to keep good workers. When San Jose raised its minimum wage in 2013, a study showed no harm to small businesses. Jobs even grew in the most affected industries. And here's the twist. Small businesses don't just compete with each other. They compete with giant companies like Walmart and Amazon. Those giants use low wages to keep prices down. Raising the wage helps level the playing field. Big companies love blaming wage hikes for rising prices. Between 2020 and 2022, U.S. inflation went way up, but wages had almost nothing to do with it. A top research group found that 53% of the inflation came from corporate profits. Only 8% came from worker pay. In fact, states like Washington and Massachusetts, where the minimum wages are higher, actually had lower inflation than states that didn't raise wages. So no, higher wages don't drive inflation. Greed does. So what's the real solution? It's not just about picking a number. It's picking a principle. You see, $15 an hour isn't the same everywhere. In San Francisco, it won't even cover rent. In rural Alabama, it might be enough to get by. That's why one-size-fits-all doesn't work. Instead, we need a national starting point. No one in America should earn less than $15 an hour. Then each state can raise it higher, based on how expensive it is to live there.
MIT's living wage calculator shows how big the difference really is.
In Boston, a livable wage is over $30 an hour. In Wichita, Kansas, about $21. That's why states like California raised their minimum wage to $20 this year. Washington state is close behind. And guess what? Their economies didn't crash. They grew. Because when people earn more, they spend more. This isn't just about wages. It's about whether people can live, stay healthy, and sleep under a roof. Because where you live shouldn't decide whether your paycheck means a real life or just barely getting by. But what if wages weren't just fair by location, but fair by effort too? What if your pay matched both the cost of living and the value you bring? The minimum wage was never meant to trap people in poverty. It was created to protect them from it. But that promise, it's been broken. We need a system that does two simple things. Keeps up with how much life costs, grows with how much work we do. A 2015 study found that if the minimum wage had tracked productivity since 1968, it would have hit around $22 by 2021. Now, it's closer to $24.
Yes, skills matter, education matters. But let's be real. Millions of skilled workers still can't afford to live. When nurses, teachers, EMTs, and electricians struggle to pay rent, it's not a skills gap, it's a wage gap, a value gap, a rigged system. And when people say we can't afford higher wages, what they really mean is they've gotten too comfortable underpaying workers. A fair wage should match reality, not just corporate convenience. Because a full-time job should never mean full-time poverty. It's time to close the gap, raise the floor, and rewrite the rules, so work finally pays what it's worth.